Awesome. Thanks, Roman. As always, fantastic job. Hey, Justin, hope you're well, man. No, we didn't get a chance to talk. We're looking forward to diving in today in our conversation. Really excited. The conference, been hearing all the chatter online, on social. CanMar doing a fantastic job, and I'll start with this when Elias joins. But again, for everyone watching, for everyone tuning in, please know how hard and challenging it is to put on such a vast event like this, and all the things that go into this. So CanMar, thank you for taking the reins in this new digital world, and thank you for helping us facilitate the right conversations so that we can progress this industry forward. Appreciate it. So we'll just wait a second while we get Elias. Justin, where are you at right now?
Yeah, I'm in New York City.
Nice, man. How's New York? I heard bars, restaurants, things like that are slowly starting to open up.
Yeah, slowly. I mean, everything's starting to come back around, but it's one of those things that's been very, very slow. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I bet, man. I bet.
Yeah. Let me see if I can't change this background a little bit here for you guys. Make it a little better. Let me know if that is any better. Is that better if I stand and talk?
Yeah, man, kind of. It's a nice glow out there, but we can see and hear you all. Whereabouts in New York are you right now?
Right in Brooklyn.
Nice.
Yeah, just trying to figure out best spot here.
I used to be there all the time, and now it seems like such a far world away from.
I know you're in Toronto, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a place that has. I mean, it's a ghost town, to be honest. If I'm being all if I'm being honest about what everything is, but yeah,
we'll get it back. Yeah, cannabis is going to stimulate the economy, right? So there we go. Yes, it's going to come back.
That's right.
So okay, cool. I don't know. I think Elias has just joined.
Hey there.
There we are. He's back. All right, perfect. Okay, gentlemen, let's jump right into this, and let's try and really get into some nitty gritty. For me, guys, this is a conversation that's extremely pertinent. As I mentioned in the email and through our conversations, I'm an athlete. This is something that has been coming up in my life constantly. And I'm really excited to dive into this. On the phone here, we have physiotherapists. We have all sorts of different individuals from a spectrum of roles, responsibilities. And I know everyone's been really looking forward to this. So again, very privileged to be here, and thank you both for joining us. So again, really quickly, thank you, CanMar, for allowing us to put this on. This is beautiful. Let's dive right in. So on the call here, we have Elias and we have Justin. Fellas, I'm thinking let's just do a quick introduction on both of you, 60, 90 degree overview, and then we'll jump right into some questions and get the panel started. So let's start with you, Justin.
Yeah, so thanks so much for having us, guys. I really appreciate it. CanMar, same thing. The conversation that's been going on now and what we're truly talking about with cannabis and it being in the front and center of things is so important. For the last, call it 8 years, I was a performance director in the National Hockey League, and have developed over the course of that time a brand called Own It that my best half and I own together, and all about empowering and educating entrepreneurs and executives as to master the energy equation and working both on the inner and outer energies that exist in the world and in the space to build more profitable businesses, better relationships at home, and all truly a holistic lifestyle that works with them, not against them.
Thanks, Justin, which is obviously ever so more important as the world just moves faster and you have so many choices. So looking forward to digging into that a little bit, Justin. Elias, would love to hear from you. Know you just did a little bit of a question and answer, but would love to hear from you. And I heard you're going to be in a rom-com, so you have to add your favorite rom-com movie onto that.
Put me on the spot there. No, so my name's Elias Theodorou, a professional fighter, advocate, along with fighting on the top of the middleweight division in mixed martial arts. I'm also the first sanctioned cannabis athlete, which allows me to medicate as prescribed by my doctor and afforded to me as my fundamental right as a Canadian to medicate more broadly. Moreover, moving forward, I'm going to be a fighter and promoter for my next event, which I'll be holding in a location that honors my therapeutic use exemption for cannabis, more specifically THC and THCA. And then I set precedent for not only myself, but all other athletes as I look to knock cannabis out of the prohibited list in athletics, both professionally and amateur, for all athletes.
Cool. So no easy, super simple, right? Yeah. Go ahead and knock cannabis out of that prohibited list.
Yeah. Well, it's been about a 4 or 5 year process through, as with anything, rules and regulations that, again, I'm slowly turning, but I'm in it for the long haul. And now I got a couple of wins under my belt more personally. And obviously the precedent that I set in British Columbia and looking to take this both in North America and worldwide next.
Wow, that's incredible. And so the stage is set for a great conversation here today. Obviously, you both have, your peak performance. You operate at a high level. So help us understand, why don't we go all the way back for the both of you and help us understand how you got introduced to cannabis and, what it has meant in your journey today. Justin, would love to talk to you, would love for you to share a little bit on what happened in the NHL, when you started using CBD within your treatments. And then Elias, for you, man, really want you to detail for us. It's been a 4 or 5 year journey, but there's been a lot of stigmas associated with it. Like, I can't even imagine what happened when you took that, to the UFC and I'm sure individuals looked at you like, what are you doing kind of thing, right? So help us understand that journey and what it's meant for you today with some stories for us.
Yeah. So when the UFC partnered with USADA, which is a third-party anti-doping agency, I was really excited about it because I'm a clean athlete and I believe in clean sport. But unfortunately, cannabis is classified as a Schedule I drug and also more broadly as on the prohibited list. So it was an uphill battle right off the gate because I was working with the U.S. system where there is that stigma and there is that Class I scheduling, which means there's no medical properties. I kept on applying for a therapeutic use exemption to the point where they essentially agreed I had the condition I had, agreed cannabis was right, but they wanted me to exhaust all other medicines under the sun before I got to cannabis. And unfortunately, I had to do that. And it affected me both mentally, physically, and emotionally in regards to the 9-week process I had to put down pills just to prove that cannabis was right for me. Fast track me becoming a free agent. I actually am now able to be an agent of change in the ways that I am doing. Obviously, the first one was with British Columbia and applying for the therapeutic use exemption and being approved. And more broadly speaking, what that means, not only for myself, the commissions all work with each other and honor each other's rulings. So now that I have one in BC, I can now go to somewhere like New York where I don't have to argue medical cannabis rights. They have to argue why BC was wrong, and they don't like doing that. So now the actual onus is on the commissions that I take it to, and next fight will be in a place that honors my therapeutic use exemption. And then again, it's just a part of me going to every single jurisdiction and knocking cannabis out of the prohibited list.
Love that. Love that. We'll definitely dive in a little bit more, but appreciate you sharing that. Justin, we'd love to hear from you, man. Help us understand your journey. Know you went through some hardships to, defend CBD, defend the plant. So talk to us a little bit about how you found that plant, your journey here, and what role cannabis has played in your life so far.
Yeah, so for me, what happened was after being in the National Hockey League for call it a couple of years, I started to see the ways in which athletes were being treated. And it was the use of Toradol, it was the use of certain injections that a lot of us are familiar with. I'm sure Elias is very familiar with a lot of the things that you utilize to alleviate the pains that you have. A lot of people turn to alcohol. There are a lot of people turn to opiates. Through my career, opiates were what got me through some tough times and ultimately sent me down a dark hole in a certain portion of my life. And so when I came to truly understand what CBD was all about and the benefits that it had, I started to ask questions within the league and was very quickly shot down, was told basically stay away, just don't continue to go down this road because it's going to end up bad for you. I ran an NHL camp down in Florida for 5 years called the Hockey Summit. And that was when I really started to get some people who really started to back this. And one was Can I Brands. They came down and really started to work with us, and Riley Cote, Body Check, and started to just educate players. I didn't even at that point, I didn't want them to push product. I wanted just the education. I wanted people to know, and players more importantly to know, that there's another option. There are other things that you can do that are within the legal stimulus, because in the NHL, it is not a banned substance, CBD. THC is. But in CBD world, there's nothing that holds you against it. But it's almost like an unwritten rule. And doctors, everybody is going to say, nah, stay away. It's not even something we're going to discuss. And so what happened was I was like, you know what? I'm not going to sit back and just take it from the league and be told, you know what, this isn't something that you can do. Because while I was there, 5 guys went to rehab. Five that a couple personally took because of certain situations that they found themselves in. And at what point is enough enough? At what point, if we who are hired to look after the player are not doing it, who is? Nobody. And so we're using their bodies, not looking for what's coming next, but rather leaving them out to and saying, this is what we want you to use because the doctors are paid by us. So who are they going to side with? The teams. The medical franchises, whether it be the hospitals, whether it be whoever, are sponsoring and paying for arenas and everything. So who are they going to send their guys to? Them. So I continued to push the envelope. I went and started educating guys. Guys started to come to me and say, hey, I've been using CBD, this product, for X amount of years. And it was like from Cambodia and like weird countries. And I was like, you know what? Like, drop that stuff now. If you're looking for something, we want to make sure it's clean. We want to make sure it's third-party tested. We want to make sure it checks certain boxes. And so I directed them, if this is something you feel like you need, this is why, then you know what? You can go on your own accord and purchase it or get used to it and use this as a pain alteration to help with the pain and help with the treatment of what's going on. So anyways, the guys started to use it. They started to, again, get wind that I was educating players. They'll never forget, got called in, it was December 14th, called into the GM's office and was asked if I was continuing to educate, continuing to talk about it, have the conversation. I said yes. It was that day that I got officially suspended. It was 3 days, or actually it was on Christmas Eve that I got fired. So I served the ultimate penalty of losing my job and sacrificing myself for the education of the player. And since then, has made it my role to continue to educate players and to push what we were doing. They actually did a documentary, TSN and ESPN, with Bobby Ryan Kessler, a number of players in the NHL, and talked about this. And it's a documentary everybody should watch. It's called Problem with Pain. TSN put it out. It can be found on TSN's website or on YouTube anywhere now.
Yep.
But it's truly eye-opening to see that the institutions are willing to put the well-being of players, the well-being of guys like Elias on the line for entertainment without giving them the choice or the education as to what is actually out there long-term that can give them a better outlook on their health, their wellness, and their well-being long-term.
Wow. So, I mean, two very real stories from two very real trailblazers here on the impact of opioids on athletes, from a physician standpoint and from an actual athlete standpoint. So, guys, tell us, like, what like we hear all the time about the opioid crisis and how it's affecting athletes and recovery and things of that nature. The addiction associated with it. But help us understand. I mean, why is there such a stigma and why is there such an education gap right now associated with cannabis within, you know, various leagues. I mean, like what is it that, you know, needs to be solved or needs to be educated on, and why are mindsets still stuck, you know, on certain paths, aka opioids?
Well, it started with racism and the what's called war on drugs, plain and simple. You got the 1913 with William Randall Hearst, who owned all the paper mills and cotton, who didn't want what's it called hemp, which was a very what's called the very what's it called? There was a lot of potential already surrounding the product and the actual resource itself. So he actually owned all the, on top of the cotton mills, he owned also all of the newspapers as well. And he partnered with the attorney general at the time and basically put racist what's it called propaganda in the newspapers that it gave certain minorities superhuman powers, and then basically were attacking people. So that racism started from there. And then from there, you got someone in the 1960s like Nixon, who used it to what's called the war on drugs and basically criminalize what's called certain groups without directly saying it was criminalizing them. So he was targeting different groups. And from there, there was obviously the laws in the 1990s, which you know, put the minimum maximums or the maximum minimums or whatever. I kind of always forget that. And then obviously the persecution of what's called nonviolent drug crimes from there. From there, in regards to the illegalization of cannabis and deemed a Schedule I drug in the U.S., then all actual medical research was paused and stigmatized against. So if you were, again, whether a job, that also included actual doctors being, you know, removed from their research and their tenure and et cetera, for even looking into cannabis. So all the benefits that us as individuals already know from THC and CBD is lost tens and tens of decades of potential research because of that stigma, because of that racism that it all underlines. Again, the term marijuana even came from a derogatory term, which would classify a certain person that smokes a type of what's called the quote unquote poor man's tobacco. That's again a labeling, a otherism, what's it called, a separating of individual. That's what this all comes from. It's racism, plain and simple, and obviously the greed of William Randall Hearst.
There you go. Well said, Elias. Really well said. Justin, anything to add on to that?
Even, I mean, to Elias's point, that's all like the history that goes on there. And you even go back to a little bit more layman's terms of the GMs, the owners, these groups. They grew up in the era of 60 to 80, most likely, where marijuana was utilized for one thing and one thing only, and it was parties, and it was seen as a gateway drug, and this is the stigma that it got. And so when all of a sudden you start to see these things come in a little bit more mainstream, these people are not even thinking about utilizing this as a pain alleviator. They're not even thinking about utilizing this to help with sleep, to help with aiding some of the habits you start to see. How many times do you have guys play a game, get on a plane, down a bottle of wine, because that's what's going to help them come down and fall asleep so they can get up and use any type of stimulant to get up the next day? And it's a vicious cycle. And all of a sudden, something doesn't become strong enough, something doesn't become greater, so you start looking for something else. So when you're saying alcohol is not a gateway, but all of a sudden you're saying CBD or CBD paired with THC all of a sudden becomes a gateway, it is a lack of education. It's a lack of understanding. It's a lack of willingness to have the conversation, to educate yourself in a way that so you can show up and all of a sudden have an educated choice. And so really, truly what's being taken away, and really what the conversation needs to be had, is we're taking away the freedom of choice. We're taking away the freedom of being able to educate ourselves the way we want to and choose the way we want to be treated. Elias is choosing the way he wants to be treated, choosing the way he wants to be medicated, choosing the way that he wants to show up. He has the freedom to choose who he wants to train with. He has the freedom to choose when he wants to fight for everybody else's entertainment. But yet the guy cannot choose how he helps himself fall asleep, how he helps himself recover, and how he helps himself treat the pain. How do those things balance out and make sense?
Excellent point, man. And when you put it like that, it really is crystal clear. It doesn't make sense. Elias, would be curious to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, obviously you took it into your own hands, right? And you forced the TUE to get that, and now you're fighting against this cause. So walk us really quickly through that journey of when you got prescribed CBD with your doctor and you actually needed to go through that exemption. I mean, what was that like, fighting against not only the stigma, but the lack of education, the ability to, force yourself to be in control finally? I mean, what was that like when you went through that with the UFC top management, and, was your doctor in the room helping explain? I mean, help us understand like how that even happens. How do you even get to this place?
Yeah, so it's actually because it is a third-party testing system that they partnered with, USADA. It was more USADA who was dealing with what's it called? The UFC themselves are quite progressive in the capacity. They don't have a year time, testing in regards to THC. They do have all the other types of performance enhancing drugs that they're testing for, but THC, it's only what's called the window. A window of period in regards to in competition. But as part of my argument, in competition, especially the flat test that they have for everyone, it's kind of the same test for everyone, but obviously every body and everybody is different. So it actually persecutes you depending on what your body is. And that's usually the case if you're a female, because of the water and the water ratio, and also the it's also tested through the fat soluble. Same thing with heavier athletes in like the light heavyweight and heavyweight. So I know guys that, for instance, he's a big dude. He's 160 pounds, and he flagged for cannabis in his system, and he did an independent test afterwards to kind of figure out how long it takes till he wouldn't have passed. It took 81 days for cannabis to get out of his system, just because of the slow turn rate, right? So how can you be persecuted and penalized for something that you did 81 days earlier, right? Like, it's that threshold is what I kind of also fought on top of the medical cannabis rights, and then also the aspect of cannabis being a medicine. And again, females are as well one of the ones that are flagged more often in testing, just because of the way their bodies are set up. So, the process was long. It's 4 or 5 years of just essentially getting the paperwork, getting the right doctors, the neurologists, this, that, and the other, going through the cycle of pills that I had to argue that and prove that, a handful of perks, which are allowed, does a lot more worse to my body than cannabis ever would. So again, that's one of the ironic things. You can smash a handful of perks just before you fight, and there's no issue. But depending on the way your body is, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of cannabis use, you can be suspended. And sometimes those suspensions are even longer than actual steroid use. One example that I would use is Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz. They both fought. Nick Diaz got caught for cannabis. There were 3 different performance enhancing drugs that Anderson Silva was caught with. He only got 14 months for all 3, right? Nick Diaz got suspended for 5 years originally. Then they willed it down to 18 months through protests, through this, that, and the other, and certain rules and legal fronts that he was able to bring it down to. But he got 5 years for just having a little bit of weed in his system. Well, actually, with Nick Diaz, there's probably a lot of weed in his system. But point being, with weed in his system versus Anderson, who got 14 months, it's ridiculous. That's the stigma. That's the outdated mindset that I'm looking to fight, not only for myself, but all other athletes. And the other layer on it, more specifically in the route as a Canadian, and it kind of comes full circle, because the way that North America commissions all work with each other, because I got a therapeutic use exemption in British Columbia, I no longer have to prove it's medical cannabis rights. They actually have to prove why it's wrong. So this actually opens the door for all it's not beer, by the way. It's hemp energy drink. What's called it's hemp energy drink. It's the first to market in Canada. I'm a partner in it. But point being, so I saw one of the questions if it was beer. No. Point being, with this, it actually opens the door for U.S. athletes, and much like the components of much like the components of different aspects of medical cannabis rights, this actually is all part of that. Because, for instance, the BC Commission is actually run by the BC government. So the actual British Columbia government recognized my medical cannabis rights and medicine in competition. And now that opens the door for Canada. And then moving forward, this will open the door for any U.S. state that I compete in moving forward that has medical cannabis rights and actually circumvents the actual prohibited aspect of the Schedule I ruling federally. So today it's BC, tomorrow it's the US, then it's the world.
Then it's the world, exactly. And that's exciting. And the cool thing about what you just said is we're on the ground floor of that, and you two are building the trail for that. So we have a couple minutes left, and I normally open it up to the audience for questions, but I'm super selfish because I'm here with you guys, and this is what I'm passionate about. So I got 2 more questions for you guys, and then if we have time, we'll open it up to the audience. And then of course, audience, you can always respond, reach out to us. I'm sure we'll be doing many of these. The couple questions I have before I let you go are, number one, so cannabis in sports, you talk a lot about outcomes, right? Pain relief, recovery, focus, creativity. Help us understand a little bit more about dosing and consumption methods. There's a variety of different form factors out there in the world now. There's no playbook on dosing. Justin's writing it in his New York suite right now. So help us understand what that actually looks like from a physician's perspective, as well as an athlete's perspective. And Justin, I'll pass the mic to you first, and then give it over to Elias.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a bunch of different ways in which you're able to take it. Like, I mean, something as easy as like a tincture that you're able to utilize in an oil form. There's a cream that you can just apply. There's sprays that are available now. I mean, you can have them in teas. You can have them, obviously, ingest it through orally. Like, there are so many ways in which we are looking at how to utilize this, and the education is. I mean, we can't even start talking about how we're going to utilize it until we break through on what we're talking about with Elias. And there was a question asked above: is why are the hospitals and the doctors and everything else not putting it out there? It's specifically because they are being hired by the teams. You have official healthcare providers of different NFL teams, different NBA teams, different NHL teams. Well, who does their alliance hold with? And that was a straight up question that I was asked when I stood in there. I said, whose team are you on? Are you on the player side, or are you on the team side? And I said, why do I have to choose a side? Are we not all doing the same damn thing? And when I was faced with it, I said, I guess I'm on the player side. And that was the moment they said, can we have your computer and all of your passes? And it in that documentary, it outlines that really well. It all comes down to money. It all comes down to what are the teams getting from these providers, and how is that umbrella hidden in the background? And lo and behold, certain people are not going to make comments. Why? Because it's written in the sand. You can see it. And so what Elias is doing, the way people like myself are standing up, is it's going to wear out, but it's going to take trailblazers to do it. And it's going to take people that are willing to sacrifice, willing to speak up, willing to be in uncomfortable situations, that will break it down further on, so that stuff like this becomes the norm instead of needles, injections, and pills, because those things are seemingly okay, but the stuff that is actually going to give us a long-term life quality, not talked about.
It's awesome, because you also just answered my last question, which was, what's the market? What does the market? Where does the market need to go towards for destigmatization, for more education? So that's incredible, man. And I agree with you. There needs to be more people willing to be uncomfortable, willing to make a stand and sacrifice the way you did, and the way Elias has. So Elias, I'll ask you the same question, man. Question A is around trying to achieve certain outcomes with different form factors and consumption methods, and then B, where do we need to take this conversation next, and how does that need to play out for us to make real attributable change?
Yeah, well, me personally, I use it throughout my day. As just mentioned, start with tinctures. The therapeutic use exemption isn't just for cannabis broadly, it's actually for THC and THCA. So the THCA, I actually consume raw cannabis daily. And what that does, it actually allows you to digest all of the enzymes and also all of the anti-inflammatories that are a part of cannabis with none of the high. So what's it called? Going from THCA to THC, what's it called? It's adding heat is what the transfer, and obviously with edibles, it goes back down. And that's why you get, that's why, you feel all of it. But I basically put it in my smoothie in the morning. And then obviously, depending on how my body feels, my therapeutic use exemption is more specifically for neuropathic pain. I have nerve damage of my upper extremities. So I add topicals as well. I'm a huge believer in them. And then I'll go train. And depending on how my body feels, I medicate there afterwards with flower cannabis. I ingest cannabis through a vaporizer, both as an athlete and also as someone that is an advocate. I want to advocate the healthiest way I see to ingest cannabis flower, and that's through a vaporizer. Then it allows me to either be more in tune with my body through stretching and other types of recovery. I'll go to physio. I'll go to some kind of chiro, whatever it ends up being, rest, and then I'll go train again. And then depending on how my body feels, I switch to more the nighttime stuff and the very pain management side of cannabis, again, with my vaporization. And then I do tinctures as well, but I tend to more load on the CBD at the end because I mentioned in the last panel, THC, it doesn't make you not dream. Sometimes you forget your dreams. So combating that with high doses of CBD at night, I'm a huge believer in. I love to vivid dream. I love to dream, and it's a real fun thing for me. So I just high dose some CBD at the end, and I remember it all, and I wake up and rinse, repeat, and recycle.
That's incredible, man. I'm getting some angry. No, I'm just kidding. No angry messages, but we can talk forever, gents, on this, and I have no doubt us three will be doing this again soon. We've opened up a kimono of so many questions, so many thoughts, so many different perspectives, and I genuinely feel like this is the beginning of this conversation. And I know there's great organizations like Athletes for Care and Kind Magazine and a variety of different humans that are all rallying around this cause. And so again, Justin, Elias, thank you boys so much for jumping on this call and educating all of us. I learned a ton right now. I think my parents might even be on this call too. We got our physiotherapist for our Canadian beach soccer team. So everyone's learning a lot, and the barriers to entry in this industry are just so challenging. And so for you guys to come here, spend your Saturdays with us and take time out of your days to educate is huge. And, this is the beginning of the conversation. So really appreciate you both jumping on. And again, for everyone on the call, I don't want to blow up your emails or anything, but make sure you email them, make sure you LinkedIn them, ask them all the questions, because I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot from Justin and Elias moving forward.
And together we grow.
Thanks so much for having it. Absolutely. And guys, push it. Ask the questions. Don't go for the status quo.
Love that. Elias, now you have to say something cool as your closing thoughts.
Together we all grow, like I said.
Together we all grow. All right, let's go. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.